Thank you, Larry. Just a quick introduction. Larry Whited is our host for today's session, and I'm Mark Bell, N7GRB, Larry AB4NX, and we've been involved with digital communication and training for some period of time, and have been promoting the Winlink Express proficiency goals. And if you're here for my wife's quilting club meeting, you're at the wrong session, so we'll go from there. The agenda for today is, first we're going to begin with Larry's going to give an overview of the Winlink architecture. There's some key components you need to understand what they are and the role they have in the system. And then I'll take over the session and we'll start walking through Winlink. And I hope everyone has had an opportunity to do the pre-work, which was to download Winlink Express. If you haven't done so, you can go to winlink.org, and in fact, I'll show you in a few moments precisely where you need to go if you have not done that. And then as we're going through today's session, you can bring up Winlink and run it in a Telnet session mode and follow through on what we are going to accomplish. I will tell you that our agenda is going to accomplish one of the first objectives in the basic Winlink Express operator proficiency goals, and that's install, configure, and operate the Winlink using Telnet. And then we would hope you would quickly move on to operating with in the RF spectrum, hopefully initially with packet, if you have packet RMS gateways in your area. If not, you're free to use HF and get on with that. The material we're covering is in a document called the Playbook for the Stormageddon series of exercises. The very beginning of that playbook will illustrate to you what you'll see here today in terms of setting up Winlink and doing a test message. If you have not done so, or join GA Aries at groups.io, and in the files section, which my cursor is at, you can see my cursor, you'll find a folder called Winlink, and then within Winlink you'll find a subfolder, Winlink exercises. In there, there's 3 sets of exercises, and you'll want to go into the Stormageddon exercise series and open up the playbook for further information. I trust everyone can see the Winlink screen. This is Winlink, the main screen, and we're going to talk about its major features. And I'll start up here at the main menu bar. As you can see, my call sign is in this particular window, and we call this the primary call sign. There are other usages of call signs in Winlink that'll have a different name, but for right now, this is the primary call sign. And by the way, just to illustrate, you can have access to multiple Winlink accounts. And so in Larry's and I's case, and others here in Gwinnett on the hospital team, we have the 4 club calls for our 3 hospitals in the public health department that we support. So you can have Winlink manage multiple accounts, basically. Nice feature. On the menu bar, one of the main ones, and we're going to jump into this in just a moment, is setting up Winlink. To fire up and initiate new messages, there's the message menu, of which there are quite a few action items you can do, but creating a message is new message. We can work with attachments. We will talk about folders in a few moments, but there's a method here to take a highlighted message and basically move it to a selected folder. And then the highlighted message can be deleted here. You can also do a right click on the message itself to delete or move. And then this is our session list. So we have different sessions, different type of communication sessions that we can utilize in Winlink Express. Today we'll be using the Telnet session. And then hopefully you'll move quickly into using an RF mode, packet Winlink, for example, or VAR HF Winlink or RDOF Winlink. And then there's four other modes of operation. There's P2P, there's radio only mode, and that's more of an advanced level of operation. You will get into P2P in the basic proficiency goals level. And there's another mechanism called Telnet Post Office, which is more advanced. But basically, you select the session you want, and then you click on Open Session, and it opens up. I will tell you there's an extensive help mechanism in Winlink Express. Set up an operation, for example. Well, I'll also tell you that it is quite a bit out of date. So in here, for example, you'll see discussions about Winmore session type, and Winmore has long since been deprecated. The winlink.org organization, the developers, have started an initiative to go through and update this help inline integrated help documentation. And they have noted that you'll see updates rolling out over time. They're not going to do one massive upgrade at once. They're going to complete a section of the help, roll that out, and then move on to the next session. So that's the help menu. Far left column are our folders. By default, Winlink Express will give you the system folders. You can create personal folders, and the easiest way to create a personal folder is simply to click on the title bar, and it brings up a personal folders menu. You type in the name of the folder that you wish to use, and then click update, and the folder will appear in your personal folders column. There's another set of folders called global folders. For example, here I have a lot of traffic in from my hospitals that we support. And what this allows you to do, the difference between personal folders and global folders is personal folders are associated with your primary call sign. Global folders are associated with or are shared with all the other accounts that you have set up. With that, and Larry, I apologize, I'm going to pop it over to you now to give the overview of the Winlink structure.
So, can you see that, Mark?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Okay, so the question is, what is Winlink? And it's a good idea to have a kind of a black box understanding of the components that make up Winlink. So you could think of Winlink as it's essentially just like your email account on the backside. It's a cloud service where all your messages, your incoming and outgoing mails is handled by the cloud service. And the benefits of having that is that you have a place to store stuff. The assumption is made that somewhere in the world, and probably most of the world and most of the United States, in a time of utilities down, we'll still have internet. We can't fix the doomsday scenario very well because we're going to be busy saving our own bacon and won't. We try to focus on the most likely, and this is what all your counties do. They have a list of the most likely things to happen, and then they have solutions. So that's the idea of Winlink. What is the level of loss of communication that you are likely to see? And I think the Puerto Rico situation was probably one of the better examples of about as bad as it gets, because they lost pretty much everything except the main city there, and were able to reach out all the way to Europe for their first calls to make that 50-mile trip across the island to the EOC, the hospital, the main hospital. and they had to go all the way to Europe to do it. So that's kind of what we try to achieve, is we reach out to the next level beyond us where there actually is service. So it allows time shifting. It involves a message sent by one station to another. So that's, I'm sorry, that was not meant to happen. I've got a screen in the way here. Generally involves a message sent from one station to another. And the reason I bring that up is because with FLDigi, you're talking to a bunch of people. It's a broadcast type mode. And this is pretty much without exception, one station to another, whether it goes through a store and forward situation or if it goes directly, or if it goes through the radio only system, it's all a one station to many or one station to another, but there's always a connection between those two stations. So, and of course, the nice thing about it is it allows you to wait 5 minutes if you're busy doing 4 other things and you don't have time to pick the message up, like with FLDigi. If you're not on, you lose it. And Winlink Express offers a lot of forms, and we will hear from Mark on that subject. At this time, Windows is the primary platform. As you can tell from the name Winlink, it's kind of Windows centric still. We'd love it if it became a cross-platform thing, but it has not yet. So I'll let Mark expand on that. And as I said, it involves, at this point, Amazon Web Service and one other server that is a kind of a backhaul in case Amazon goes down. You can do peer-to-peer sending, and that would be a grid down scenario where you could pick another station and make an RF connection, but you're still doing that kind of handshake thing that Winlink does. And as I mentioned, the loss of internet is going to be incremental in most cases, so it gives you a lot of options to reach out before you have to do that grid down scenario. You can reach out and find a station, and the nomenclature you need to be familiar is the CMS, that's the central servers, and then there are RMS servers, and those are the radio interface between the person who wants to send the message and or receive a message and the actual internet. So what you're looking for is a connection to that internet via a radio, and those are called remote servers. So moving on, here's what it looks like in real life. It's kind of like this big cloud, and then we've got these various interfaces, and it can be anything from mesh network to any type of radio system, but that becomes the interface with the internet. So we're happy for Amazon Web Services, but it has its hiccups at times. So we're in the past we had 7 discrete servers, which it would default to at various places in the world. Now Amazon kind of has the same thing, only it's all one monstrous cloud server. So we'll move on from that. The advantage of peer-to-peer, there's no RMS gateways necessary. So if your internet is down, the gateway is part of a radio message server that can move your message on, but we're not going to go into that unless Mark chooses to. You have the choice, there are discrete stations across the world, and those are published, and it's a good idea to know those in advance in case your internet goes down and you don't want to have to download that list over the radio. So you kind of need to get your favorite station, backup stations in mind. But anyway, when you're doing peer-to-peer, you have frequency flexibility. So anywhere in the digital band and any of the channels, you can move, and of course you have to have a partnership with another station, but you can actually set up communication and go from North Georgia to South Georgia, or pretty much anywhere that the band that you're currently using will go. And of course, you do have to have real-time connection there. It's not like the store and forward. You lose that capability of time shifting. Although a station can set up as a peer-to-peer, and you're supposed to manage your station, at least in theory, but you can have connections come at any time from people who are in that mode. So, you know, the one thing, and I'm sure Mark is going to point this out, but the type of message that you're dealing with, you absolutely have to address that message before you put it in the outbox. You have to select the method by which you're going to transfer it. And if it's going to be a peer-to-peer, you absolutely have to, because Winlink always defaults to the Winlink method, and you have to purposely select that peer-to-peer method. So your choices are Packet, RDOP, and Vera FM, and Mesh Network, and Pactor, which is a rather expensive way to do things, but that is an option as well for both peer-to-peer and Winlink. So I'm going to go ahead, and I think this is kind of where we need to go ahead and turn it back to Mark. So let me hit the stop share button, and I will turn it back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay.
All righty. Thank you very much, Larry. So Larry was talking a moment ago about the different sessions, and that ties back to Winlink Express, where this drop-down menu for the session types is at. And this is what he was talking about, that you can select the session type here. So we've pretty much, in the right portion of the screen to finish off the discussion, obviously, just like with any email client, there is a window for providing a list of the messages, and then there's a preview for the currently selected message. In this case, I've got 3 messages in my inbox. They're from a net that we ran a few days ago, playing with the spot rep, which is one of the forms that's in Winlink Express. So we've walked through the overview of the screen. Are there any questions? Just if you have any, you can bring them up in the chat session, and Larry will do the needful and pass it on. So settings. If you've got Winlink Express up now, what I'd like you to do is to go to the settings menu, Winlink Express setup, and that'll bring up this pop-up. And this is your main Winlink setup properties page. And if you have not already done so, enter your call sign. And once again, this is your primary call sign. When you first set up a Winlink account, I believe it still gives you an option to see the password. You used to be able to see the password at any time by clicking a little checkbox. They've removed that for security purposes. So what do you need to enter? Well, you need to enter your call sign. You need to provide a password. And please put in a recovery email address. And why? If you ever forget your password, just like in normal applications, internet-based applications, there's a recovery mechanism. You can request that your password to be emailed to you, and it'll come to this address. Ignore the auxiliary call signs and tactical addresses. This is more of an advanced feature that if you're interested in, we can get into at a later date. I had asked as pre-work that you determine your grid square, and I provided this really nice little reference to this particular tool on the internet, and simply entering your call sign, hit submit, and it'll come back with your grid square for your, this is obviously your FCC address of record. It'll come back with your grid square and your latitude, longitude. Now, later we'll be doing a check-in form. And one of the things you'll need is your decimal GPS coordinates. So if you have not already done so, as I'm going through the presentation, find out what your decimal GPS coordinates are, and we'll use that at a later date for the check-in message. Back to the setup screen. So the grid square is important for a number of reasons. One is later when you're operating with any of the RF-based session types, there is a channel locator. And basically, you'll get a list of RMS gateways servicing your area based upon your grid square. And all the RMS gateways that are registered with the winlink.org organization have their grid squares as part of the data that they get from the RMS gateway talking to the backend CMS server. And so they use that grid square information for building up that channel list of stations that are closest to you. By default, when you install Winlink, it comes in a trial use mode. When you bring Winlink up, if you haven't already noticed, it'll give you a little pop-up and you have to wait for a period of time, and then you can press and proceed to use Winlink in the trial mode. And there is no difference other than the nag at the beginning. But you're highly encouraged to register your Winlink Express. It's registered by call sign, and get a key, and the key is associated with your call sign. So if you copy it down, it's not going to do you any good because you need to have my call sign. And then the service code public for amateur radio. And that, from a standpoint of required stuff, is really it. Now, it asks you over here for contact information. It says it's optional. I highly encourage you to fill in your contact information for a couple of different reasons, and we'll see that in just a moment. But that's the setup mode. So once you've done that, hit update and you're good to go. Next, I'm going to jump into operating a Telnet session. I've selected Winlink Telnet. I open up the session. So for each of the session types that you can bring up, there is a session manager. And this is the Telnet Windows Session Manager. And what I'm going to do is, by default, your session manager does not query a RMS gateway. It does not query the CMS server. You have to explicitly start the session. And now you're going to see a series of messages coming out. And this is the process of my client, Winlink Express, connecting to the Amazon Web Service CMS service on that server. There is a lot of information that comes out, but basically at this point in time, it would come up if I had messages pending, it would tell me, and then it would start downloading them. If I had messages in my outbox, it would start transmitting those messages. So let's go ahead and go through and create a test message. So at home, go ahead and you can follow through on this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the main Winlink Express window. I'm going to click on Message, New Message, and it brings up the new message window. At this point in time, I can create a basic message. Larry, well, actually, I'm going to do a test message, literally test. And you cannot send Winlink Express messages to yourself. So if you put in the to field or the CC field your own call sign, the CMS server is going to reject it, and you'll get back a message as such. But they have this special account set up called test. And so you can address your message to test. So I have my message, I have it addressed to a destination. Larry, I'm going to pick on you and CC you. I'm also going to tell you, and semicolon, by the way, to separate. You can put in email addresses. So I'm going to put in my own email address there. And I'm going to go ahead and post it to the outbox. And over here in the far left, you can see in the system folders, I now have a message in the outbox. If I select that, there's my message. Going back to the Winlink session, I'm going to start. It's going to connect to the CMS server. It's telling me it's sending my message. The Telnet sessions are very fast, assuming you have a good Ethernet connection. It tells me it sent one message from my outbox, and I look over at my outbox, it now says 0. And it gives me some statistics about the number of bytes and the transfer time. So I'm just going to wait a moment for that test message. I'm going to come back and I'm going to click on start again. I'm receiving a message, and there it is. There's my test message. So guys, if you and gals, if you've got your Winlink Express running, if you've not already actually sent a message, I invite you to take a moment to do so, as I just illustrated, and see if it works for you.
We do have a question, and I'm going to let you decide how to answer it. Would it make sense to add all the Aries team members as contacts?
Okay, so I'm gonna, yeah. So you can create message groups. You know, that would have been a SEC type of question as to whether or not we wanted to do it for all the Aries members. But you can set up a group of contacts. I have not done so. I do know it's doable.
A good example of that would be an event like on the death race. We have always forward to everybody what we get because it's shared information, and it kind of serves as a mesh network. So we do have a contact list for those events. I think that you lose benefit by when it gets to be such a large group. There's a danger, of course, of flooding the airwaves. The other thing is it does take a lot of bandwidth up if you're on RF. So you know, when all, which is not necessary, it all goes to CMS and all that's handled on the backside. But anytime you generate message traffic, there's the danger that people will be responding unnecessarily and clutter the airways. So I would keep the groups targeted to what you're doing at the time. I wouldn't just add absolutely everybody unless you have a position where you need to call out, say, a team or something like that, where there are a lot of people involved. Back to you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. We did have a question pop up. But basically, to select you use the drop down to select a session type. So we've selected Telnet. That does not automatically start that session. You actually have to come over to the open session text. It's actually a hotspot. You click on that, and that will then bring up that session. I hope that answers the question. So I hope everyone's had an opportunity to try this out and get a test message. I'm not going to go to my email account at this time, but I'm quite sure I'll have a copy of that test message there. I will tell you, though, one more cool thing that's in the Stormageddon playbook with instructions on how to do this, but you can send a message to a phone, a text message. And as many of you may already know, your cell phone service providers provide a gateway from SMTP mail to SMS or MMS type message traffic. So, for example, I'm a Spectrum customer which uses the Verizon network, and I believe Verizon's gateway is vtex.com. So I could send a message to my phone number at vtex.com, and it will pop up as an SMS text message on my phone. Okay, the next topic we're going to talk about is accessing standard templates. And this is one of the power features, in my opinion, of Winlink Express. And for those of you that have played with the PAT Winlink client, they have recently added in standard Winlink templates into that communications tool. But basically, you open up message, new message, the new message manager pops up, select template. Now, there's three classes of templates here. The one that we're most interested in is the standard templates. There are other templates, global templates, and then personal templates. And you can see that in this case, N7GRB, these are templates that are specific to my setup only. Global templates typically is blank, but if you have like custom templates, this is where you would put them in. I have a template I created myself for doing a point of dispensing sit rep, and then there's a custom template for doing SMS messages. So global templates, standard templates, personal templates. In the standard templates, there's quite a few, as you can see here. And the ones that we're most interested in Aries are the ICS USA forms. So, here, what's the most commonly used ICS form? It's the ICS 213. And all you would do is you would basically click on this guy, and it would bring up a web form for you to fill in the information. We're not going to do an ICS 213 today. I'm just illustrating, though, how you would go and select a standard template. The ICS forms most commonly used for Aries work. And then in the general forms, there's a pair of forms at the very end that we have been utilizing in the Sunday Aries Winlink net, and that's the Winlink check-in. We don't use the checkout on the Sunday Winlink net, but we definitely do use the check-in. And when you go through the Stormageddon exercises, the Winlink check-in form is used throughout the exercise. So I just invoked the web browser. We call this the initial form. It's the one that you do your initial message traffic in. There's a reply form for a subset of the other standard templates. The check-in form does not have a reply, it just has the initial. So if we're following through it at home, one of the things you can do is, you'll notice here at the top, Winlink check-in, and then I have my organization I'm affiliated with, Gwinnett Aries. And you could do that simply by doing setup and typing in your organizational information, or it could be your location. If I'm involved with the hospital activities, I'm over at the Northside Hospital Duluth. I'll have Northside Hospital Duluth in up here. So that's using this nice little field they've added. Load check-in data and save check-in data are two nice features. If you're repetitiously using a web form with the same basic data over and over again, what you can do is you can type the information once, save that data, and the next time you need to send a check-in form, when you get the Winlink form check-in form come up, simply load check-in data, select it from the list of message forms that you've saved, and it'll pre-fill out everything. Now, if you use this mechanism, make sure you come back through the message and update what needs to be updated for this reuse of that old data. And one of those things you typically do is you set the date and time for the current date and time. And as you saw here, I simply clicked on the date and time field. It brought up a pop-up with the current date and time. I'm going to go ahead and select OK, and you can see it updated. So once again, at home, if you're following through, please do so and open up this form, and you can add the second setup information, or you can add that at a later date. The next thing is select status and exercise net and real event. For today, I'm just going to select exercises for the group. Band, we're using Telnet session today. So NA is the selection for a Telnet session. If I'm on packet, VHF, if I'm on VARA or RDOP HF, I select HF amateur. But for today, band is not applicable because we're doing a Telnet session mode. Here again, we're using a Telnet session, so I select Telnet. If I'm on packet. If I'm on RDOP or VARA, I select the appropriate mode. But for today's exercise, it's Telnet. The send to field is basically what's in this field will get transferred to the sending form. I was just involved with the Winlink Thursday exercise on Thursday. But today I am going to send this to test. And then just to keep Larry's inbox happy. And remember, you really can't send a message to yourself. Call signs of initial on-site operators. Well, I'm at home operating by myself. If I'm at a hospital running the hospital system, there may be another operator there, Charlie, WS4, TOT, etc. Winlink will pre-fill in the sender from the primary call sign that we talked about earlier that's running Winlink Express. Location, I'm just going to put in my home QTH for now. And because I've entered latitude and longitude before for my home QTH, I'm going to leave this alone. When you fill in latitude and longitude and you leave the last form, it fills in the military grid reference system. So if you're into military grid reference, that information there, and it also fills in your grid. This is a new feature, What 3 Words. It was added in about a month ago. And based upon the GPS coordinates, it ran out to an internet site and determined the What 3 Words from my location and filled in this field. You can click this. I'm not going to do it now, but it'll bring up a What 3 Words map and show you where those 3 words are mapped to on a global map. Comments. If you're operating and doing the Sunday Aries Winlink net, typically what you'd put in here is, please check in Mark N7 GRB and your Aries affiliation. And I can't type worth beans here, guys, so bear with me. And then if you're operating on auxiliary power, it's kind of nice to put that in there, but that's fundamentally all you really need to do for a check-in. Now, I mentioned earlier, you could save this and then reload this information at a later time. For doing the Winlink Sunday nets, this is a very convenient method to save it once and then load it repetitiously and update as needed. But now that I'm done, I press submit. And this page is going to go blank. I don't need it anymore. So now I'm back on my message manager and it's filled in the view window with the text version of the message I'm going to send. If this message is addressed to an email address, they're not going to see the web form. They're going to see what you are seeing here in this window. You'll notice that there's now an attachment. And this attachment is a form data XML file that is used by the receiving Winlink Express client to bring up the appropriate web form view and fill in the information for what you provided when you view it. So this message is addressed to the test to bounce back to me, and it's addressed to AB4NX. I'm going to, as we did before, post that to the outbox. And you can see now I have a message in the outbox. It's my message ready to go. And I'm going to go back to my Winlink session, which I still have running. Start, it's going to contact the CMS server. It's going to quickly send that one message. And we have to wait for it to disconnect and it's done. And by the way, every time you do start, it's not only going to send messages, but as I mentioned earlier, it's going to, if there's any messages there waiting for you, pick those up and download them to your client server, client application. Okay, I've waited long enough. I'm going to do a start. Okay, and here's my Winlink Express message that I sent as a test message. And there it is. Okay, so we had a question. Where is the Winlink check-in message located at? And once again, I come here to message on the main screen, select new message, select template, select the standard templates, expand that, and the check-in message is in the general forms category down at the very bottom, Winlink check-in. So I hope you followed through and did a check-in message. And for this Sunday, send a check-in message to KX4MAT. There's some changes going on there, so we'll see if that email address is still functional and being managed. But KX4MAT is the current location of record to send messages to. Hang on a second while I bring up my web browser. This is the georgiaaries.org website. And in here, there's a selection, net and frequencies. I scroll down to net schedules, and here's the Sunday Georgia State Aries net schedule. And it changed, the times change depending upon if you're in daylight savings time or not. And you can see every Sunday there's a Winlink net that's run. It says send an ICS 213. We ceased doing that midway through last year, and unfortunately, the website's not been updated. But if you go through and do a Winlink check-in message, just like I illustrated here a few moments ago, and send that in, anytime Sunday is fine. And we're on the 4 p.m. net schedule, so it needs to be sent in prior to 4 p.m. on Sunday. And then when we get into the summer schedule, that's 5 p.m. Okay, so we've gone through creating and sending a Winlink check-in form, and you know about the schedules and for the Georgia Aries net. I am now going to go to, and on the winlink.org page, there's a menu for my account. So I have my web browser set up to pre-fill out my information, but I'm going to log into my account N7GRB. Okay, so when you went through the setup process for Winlink here, yep, that makes sense. And you sent your first message, the Winlink server will note that you don't have an account, and it will set up an account with your call sign and password that you entered from the Winlink settings page. So here I am, I'm in my account. And this is the information I entered in the optional contact area. One item to note, by the way, maximum message size, 120 KB. That's the limit. You can't send a message any bigger. And by the way, a message that's of that size, if you send it through RF, means it's going to take a tremendous amount of time and likely time out the RMS server. You can, yeah, go ahead.
We have a question as to how often you check during an actual event, and the answer involves some more information as to setting the check time on their auto check time, but generally it's every 15 minutes maximum during an event. So I'll let you take it from there, Mark.
Yeah. I personally do not use the auto check time. That is one of the features in the settings area that you can set up. And why don't I? And that's because quite often, and for example, unless you're running HF at the hospitals, you only have one VHF, UHF radio, and you're splitting that between packet and voice. So I personally don't run the auto check-in, but in a real event, at least manually go in there on a 10 to 15 minute interval and check for traffic.
Right. The only time you would use an auto check with an RF device is when you have a discrete radio set to do that. And we do that on the Death Race and the Jewel, but we do have a separate radio to do only that. So you don't have to worry about it intruding into the rest of your channels.
Yeah. Okay. So you can update your contact information here on this page. There is one field down here, alternate temporary forwarding email. Now, this gets a lot of people that are new to Winlink in trouble, because what you could do here is you could put in as notes an email address, and any Winlink traffic that comes to the CMS server will be automatically routed to your email address that you've provided here. Now, you may feel that that's a nice feature, and it has its place. But what trips up a lot of folks is they'll come up here, they'll put in an email address, and they'll forget that they set the alternate forwarding, and they'll be in Winlink Express. And someone will go, hey, I sent you a message 2 hours ago. Didn't you get it? And you'll go, no, because it's not there in the inbox. And why? Because the CMS server routed it to your email address. So just be advised that if you do the temporary forwarding, you're not going to see any email coming to your inbox from the CMS server. Okay, now on the left side in the navigation frame, I'm a sysop. I have an RMS gateway at my house. Larry's the sysop for a HF and packet system that's up on Mount Oglethorpe. You could do some obvious things here, but one of the things I wanted to point out is that they have a webmail interface. Many of you use webmail for Gmail, or a variety of different providers have a webmail interface, but you can access your Winlink messages that have not been downloaded to your PC using the Winlink Express, and you can send and messages from here too. So there is a webmail interface for the system. So that's pretty much the account, the winlink.org account. And once again, I highly encourage you to please fill in your optional information. You've been given a heads up on the temporary forwarding email issues that can come up if you use that feature. I think I've only used it once and then forgot about it, and then I wonder why I wasn't getting email, and that's because I had a forwarding account set up. All right, that's it with the winlink.org site. You can peruse this a little bit more. There's a map tool here that you can go to. Book of Knowledge. Oh, that's a good one to point out. There's a tremendous amount of information about running Winlink and using the Winlink system and infrastructure. There's also a number of how-to recipes on particular topic areas. And if you're a Yaesu 991 user, for example, there's a couple of articles here on how to set up the 991 for running Winlink Express. How to send a message to yourself. We just went through that using the test server. So there's this significant amount of information that's here, just to put it simply. User programs, if you've not downloaded Winlink Express, you can come here. And then download from here. So that's it for the winlink.org website. That's it. And Larry and I would kind of like to know, are there any particular topics that you would like to cover in a future session? We're going to try and keep the sessions to no more than an hour. You can come off mute if you'd like and verbally raise what you'd like to see.
One of the things that we have looked at is a lot of people run into certain problems with accessing their hardware via their the setup in Winlink. And we can't fix the problem for every piece out there. The 991 is an excellent example. There's two versions of that. An example of something that is really unique and kind of causes a lot of questions. We on our Winlink site on groups.io under files, we have a few setup recipes, and that's a good place to go. But we have talked about, and we're going to try to set up a session, if there is interest, on the general principles of how to set up a simple signal link setup or in radio setup, and the general principles on what you look for in the setting up the pathway for sound to make it between your computer and the sound card and the radio, and then back out the radio. So I rather imagine that topic would be of interest.
Yeah, we just got a big yes in the chat session.
Okay, we figured that, and that's one of the things we missed by not having the state meeting. I was going to have an hour-long session of all the gotchas, the kind of the start to finish, working with a gateway and all that stuff. And both sides, my Go Kid, and on the other end, I had a full gateway setup. And just to kind of familiarize you with that. But a lot of that we can do on Zoom. And Mark has some pretty unique setup there to help him show his radio. For instance, when you set the sound level, it's very important on HF to get that right. And we can demonstrate that setup as well. So that's an advanced topic, but I just thought you might be interested in there. Yeah, there are a lot of things on YouTube. We just said that is absolutely correct. And if you are take initiative, you can go out there and solve most of your own problems. Guess how Mark and I did it? So yes, please do. But for those that are, pretty new in radio operations, particularly HF radio, we do have some things that we can do to guide you on your way. But absolutely, go to YouTube, go to your good friend Google, and look for answers. And I'm telling you, they're all out there if you're really persistent.
Larry, there was a good question here on the Winlink or Georgia Area site. Is there a list of VHF packet frequencies? And I'm going to turn so the USB port is happy. My packet radio on here. And so that was a good question, by the way. On the Winlink or Georgia Area site, is there a list of VHF packet frequencies? From a standpoint of Winlink and RMS servers, I'm going to select, I got to kill my other session I had running if I can find out where it's at.
Yeah, that's one of the features of Winlink Express itself is the proper selection of your grid square, which gives you that list, even on 2 meters, that list of the appropriate stations. And if you go into the channel selections up there and you click on the top of the grid square, you can get the grid squares lined up in order, and you can find your grid square, and that will isolate the radio stations both on HF and VHF. And remember, you have to select what mode, because it starts with PACTOR, and you have to get to packet and all that, and it will give you. There you go, Mark. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So this goes by, I think it's actually mandatory that you have to enter a grid square in Winlink Express on setup. I think that feels actually mandatory. But so it takes my settings grid square, and it builds by default up this channel list of RMS gateways, starting it's sorting on distance. You can click on these headings and it'll sort on the headings too, but by default it's by distance. And I'm located right now about 50 feet away from my RMS gateway on packet. And so here's your packet frequencies that these RMS gateways are using. Now, recontrol on packet sessions is not there. So you have to manually go into your radio and set it up on the frequency as discussed here. And let's say I want to talk to the Red Cross station down in Atlanta. I can't get there direct. So the packet session manager gives you the option to select a digipeater, and then you enter in the digipeaters, either call sign. In this case, it's got a
alias.
an alias, and I've got to quickly turn my radio to the 145.710.
As you're doing that, let me just point out a really important point. If you are being deployed to another area, it's really important to know what that grid square is and enter that in your setup screen where you move to. I had somebody send me a message and said, you know, I just checked in from Ohio and it said your station was 100 miles away. And I just want you to know that you're not listing the right distance. And I said to him in response, I said, well, there's two things that determine that. It's your grid square and my grid square, and I have mine set right. You might want to look at your grid square. So if you want to know where the stations are closest to in North Georgia, you put in that grid square and then it will bring up the right stuff. And you can choose that beforehand and save yourself a lot of grief. So back to you, Mark.
Thank you. So right now, my Winlink Express packet session is in the process of, it's connected with the Red Cross station downtown in Atlanta, and it's going through a process of the Atlanta station is going through a process of attempting to connect to the CMS server to check for any traffic for me. Sometimes there's issues, and in this case, there was nothing there. Everything worked just fine. Sometimes the RMS gateway that you connect to may be temporarily not on the internet. You'll get the initial connected to, but it won't give, it'll time out trying to get to the CMS server. This is an example of a complete connection that was done to the RMS gateway, then to the CMS server, and then there was no message traffic for me there. So it gave me the statistics and then disconnected from that. But that's an example of running a packet session through a digipeater.
Yeah,
really nice stuff.
On the back side, I was monitoring his connection. I happened to be the SysOp for, or SysOp for the KG4ARC-10, and I watched him connect and I watched him disconnect, and I know that it was a successful connection. So that's kind of a exciting little geeky thing that I like to do, is watch how things are going on the back side and make sure that they're working okay.
Yep. So I have a challenge for you. Once you get a radio connected to your setup and you're able to successfully, talk to the radio from your PC, go into the channel select list and just see of the nearest stations around you, which ones you can reach. That would be a great value in the event of a real emergency, knowing I can reach certain stations and other stations that are just too far away that I can't reach. There was a comment in the chat session about the situational awareness map for listing gateways, and you're correct. It's not completely up to date. Also, digipeaters is one where it's pretty much word of mouth in your local area as to what the digipeaters are and where they're located at, or your local radio club that's sponsoring those. Brian would like to get the digipeaters up on the situational awareness map. Right now, there's only just a couple of them that are up there, and the 4 that we have in Gwinnett, for example, are up there. But basically, the trustee or the person who's responsible for that digipeater needs to fill out the appropriate forms that Brian has for describing the digipeater's properties in order for him to put it up there. And that's the challenge, is getting the digipeater administrators to provide that information and then keep it up to date as time goes by, which, like I said, is not completely up to date in the text message. Good question. Anything else? Are there anything that anyone would like to see demonstrated before we close today's session? I think I will point out that one of the other great places to go for getting Winlink training is the MCOM training organization. I provided the link, I believe, in the information about today's session on that went out to everyone. You can click here to receive email updates. And then you can come in here and you can go to the MCOM training groups.io and subscribe to that groups.io group, and they provide announcements of each exercise through groups.io. So highly encourage that. Winlink Thursdays, they just started this past Thursday. And what was the first message? It was the check-in message that we went through, and they provide detailed instructions for what to put in the message. So that's a great vehicle for getting some training done.
I was going to say, you may notice that the address for this exercise is a tactical address, and you might just mention real quickly what that involves so that people understand that that's a symbol of the actual address. And go ahead.
Yeah. So there's a little bit more advanced topic. There's this concept of tactical addresses. The tactical addresses are only known in the context of doing traffic to and from the CMS server. If you're doing a peer-to-peer, tactical addresses do not work. So in the case of MCOM training organization, they have regions that mimic the FEMA regions. And so here in Georgia, we're in FEMA Region 4, which is the MCOM training organization's tactical address, ETO-04. It's ETO all cap letters. Well, it's going to capitalize them anyway when you enter in the tactical address, ETO-04. So if you're participating in the Winlink Thursday exercises here in Georgia, you address the message to ETO-04, and it'll go to the right radio operator who's servicing our Region 4 area. And if you know Lee Stone, KT4LS, I believe, he is the what we call the clearinghouse for ETO-04. So all your check-in messages, all your traffic that you're addressing to the MCOM Thursdays goes to basically Lee Stone. He processes them, and it gets stuck up on a map. I'm not sure if they've posted a map yet for this past Thursday's exercise. But anyway, that's the MCOM training organization's Winlink Thursdays, and I highly encourage you guys to set into that. Larry, a question: is there a good list of FM VARA digipeaters? And it's the same as the FM, the analog digipeaters. No.
Yes, absolutely. And the problem, of course, with VARA is that it's not exactly a digi anyway. None of the digipeaters that you are familiar with using AX25 work. The only one that I know of that is a digipeater is KX4MAT -10, which I'm the sysop for. And if you put KX4MAT-15, you can practice peer-to-peer on VARA FM with somebody else who can reach that repeater. But generally, I think there are about maybe 5 VARA FM stations in Georgia. Most of them are not high enough to serve that well. I think the one in Fannin County may be, I think it's HHH. Is probably a pretty good one, but of course KX4MAT is at 3,200 feet, And I can get into it. I live in a hole about 100 feet below ground level, but from my tower with the beam, I can get into it 50 miles away and get really good throughput. So hope you guys do become interested in VARA FM. It is a phenomenal tool. I have gotten throughput in the 50s, 50K region from KX4MET. So it's pretty incredible. Go ahead.
Larry, a question. VARA, FM VARA, vertical, horizontal, or both work?
Well, it depends on how. Of course, it'll work either way if the station is set up that way. They're all generally set up just like FM stations, and they're vertical. So yeah, don't send out a wave that has a very small intersection with what's going on the other end.
Good question. All right. Anything else?
I certainly don't have anything. I think it was a great presentation. I really appreciate what you've done, Mark, and I appreciate everybody that's here. We had 27 participants, which is really good for an entry level. And I hope that you all will take advantage of the training program. We have a basic training level, which Marcus showed you, the Groups IO. Become a member of Georgia Aries Groups IO and access that material. We also have an intermediate or independent level, as Mark calls it, that you can really become proficient in and be a dependable operator at a site, for your served agency. So it's really an excellent program. And we have, and by the way, this will be projected, it will be available on YouTube, the Georgia Aries YouTube channel, you can search for, and we have all of our training up there. So we have some more advanced stuff up there that you probably would like to see. So I hope you will go ahead, Mark, and tell us what you're doing there.
Yeah, just real quick. The Stormageddon playbook is where you would start, and what we covered today in terms of the initial setup, downloading and setting up Winlink Express with screenshots to illustrate what you need to fill in, etc. It is part of this playbook, but also starting a Winlink Telnet session. We went through this live, doing a test message. We went through that live. Here's an example of sending a message to be directed to a text message to a phone. All this is in here. Packet session configuration. You may want to come here next, and I'll just tell you that you can do Winlink packet with just about any radio, current generation radio, that has reasonably fast switching between transmit and receive. And it may require an additional device called a sound card or a sound modem to interface between your PC and the radio. I've run packet sessions using a biofang and a device called a LinkD. Oh, I forgot. It's basically a device that connects to my PC through a Bluetooth and connects to my biofang through cables and provides an interface for doing packet sessions. So, and that's a very low end. I have a ICOM 5100, and the 5100 does not have a TNC data port on the back. So what do? I have a signal link device, which on one side connects to my PC, and on the other side connects to one of the speaker out ports on the back of the 5100 and the microphone jack. And that works just great too. And in fact, I updated this document to show a picture of that setup. Here's my signal link, and I need to switch between using the microphone for radio or the signal link device. So I have an AB switch, off of eBay, pretty cheap device. And then that's plugged into my laptop and the radio, and I can do packet with my 5100. There's also other radios that have TNC data ports that you can plug a interface cable right from your PC into the radio. A lot of us have ICOM 7100s. The ICOM 7100 has a USB interface, and that's how I do packet from my laptop to my 7100 is through a user USB interface. So these are all different ways that you can interface. And there's so many different combinations of radios, sound devices, and interface cables that I would have a document the size of the Atlanta yellow page directory if I wasn't careful. So the comment was made. There's a lot of YouTube videos earlier out on this topic. So, do a little research. You saw the winlink.org has 991 set up and so forth. But basically, your next step, I would highly recommend you come here to the Stormageddon Playbook and pick up from there and continue on. Then there's a bunch of exercises that you can perform. We talked about this last week in the area on the Winlink proficiency exercises, but real quick, we did a Winlink Express check-in form, and in the Stormageddon series of exercises, you'll be doing this with some regularity. Any case, that's all I wanted to show about the GA Ares file section.
We're running at about 15 minutes after the hour here, so it's probably time to wrap it up. And Mark, do you have anything further before I actually do that?
No, go ahead, Larry. Thank you very much.
Okay, yes, thank you so much for a wonderful session. I feel like we really got a lot out of this. Was very entry-level material, but it's very thorough, and this is the kind of background you need. The other thing you need to go along with this is when you do these served agency, you need to operate with great accuracy, be very precise with your data. Do follow directions, don't change data when you're entering. And if you do all that and you learn how to use this equipment, you will be a great asset to Georgia Ares or to your local served agency. So thank you to everybody. I'm going to stop the recording now, and I appreciate everybody's participation today.